Kevin.
Brian Castle.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. We're back for episode 2 of the Climb That Mountain podcast, brought to you by Cricket Shirts. Just kidding. Before we get into it with our incredible guest you've invited, we're both a little heavy-hearted at the time of the recording, so we'll give a moment of shout-out to our people and families in Ashe County, North Carolina, and Henderson County in the wake of the I've heard either a 500-year in some circles or 11,000-year flood. Regardless, it's pretty terrible.
We've always had legend in Ashe County of the flood of 1916, and my best friend Travis, his uncle had a home that was from the late 1800s and had a marking on it from where the 1916 flood came up, and it was 24 inches above that.
Wow!
So it's at least a big century storm, and a lot of destruction back home. And we're actually working actively to raise money for the food bank today, and you always see pictures in the media, but this is one that my friends' uncles, my friends' cousins. There's a lot of people we know that their homes have washed down the river and or been flooded really badly. So it's a tough time, and it's going to be a long recovery for them.
It is. One thing we know, because we know there are people, this is a particularly resilient group, and I have no doubt that the community is going to rebound. And I'm already glad to see people from other parts of the state priming up, getting ready to go back to that area and spend their tourist dollars as soon as people are ready to have them. Surrounding areas are going to show a lot of love as soon as the recovery is in full swing. Well, I'm excited to speak to our guest, Samuel E. Cummings III. Welcome, Samuel. Samuel is the world's foremost expert, from what I hear, on data analytics and subfields of AI and predictive analytics. That's where the little joke from my episode title, "You're So Predictable," comes from. He uses AI and predictive analytics in the field of customer success. He's co-founder of DataPlant, a customer success company. He's also an author and global contributor to the AI for Diversity initiative, and he's led customer success organizations at companies like Gainsight, LinkedIn, ever heard of it? Indeed.com, ever heard of it? Thank you, Kevin, for this wonderful introduction. Tell us, before we let Samuel spit fire to our audience, tell us how you two met and collaborated.
Yeah, like all long-lasting relationships, the personal side came first. We were at a conference that essentially is the skull and crossbones of FinTech, which is called SkiTech. I was a founding member of that, and it's a fantastic grouping. And Sam was nice enough to come to the event and be one of our speakers to educate the audience on how he felt AI was going to implicate FinTech over the next few years. One thing I noticed, my first interaction with him was actually live when he was speaking. Incredibly bright, incredibly creative and innovative, thinking outside the box, maintains heavy being genuine, which that's something I really it's a characteristic I love. But then when he completed his talk, we just kind of got off to the side. It was about the same time I was writing the Fast Company article for AI. So I've been doing a ton of research with you on AI.
Well, Samuel, so you are in what has to be the sexiest field in the world right now, data science. That probably makes you people's sexiest man alive. Tell us what's driving all that sexiness and buzz around the data science field.
Yeah, so we're not quite Dos Equis, but right there, that close enough. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me. It's been an honor to really come into this conversation. I mean, we are in a time that's not coming out of the blue. We have evolved out of so many other ages that have made this such an important problem right now. And I'll start with one thing. Anybody have a cell phone? Or how about anybody have an email inbox? How many notifications do you have on there? I would just guess maybe it's more than 20. Maybe, if you take them all. We have all survived the information age. And that information age has really led to an overwhelming of notifications, emails, follow-ups. Regardless of what we do in our jobs, we are all swarmed with information. And that's what's coupled with this other innovation that's occurred has created the industry that I came out of. And that other innovation is called the subscription economy. That, coupled with the information age, has led to a problem. And that problem is the challenge of companies being able to empathize with their customers. And if you think about like what we all experience, we're all a customer of something. So as consumers, we want companies to show us through their actions and their choices that they care about us or that they understand us. That problem is called digital empathy. And that's what, again, as I share a little bit more today, I've had the honor of working in is helping companies empathize with not just one or two people. We could do that as human, but thousands of companies or hundreds of thousands of people all at once.
Did you just hear the mic drop from that?
That was a great episode.
All right, we had to get you out here by 3:30, so
He's like, we only got 9 minutes.
What's great is, I mean, what's really impressive about that is, I think as we've evolved, like we're trying to manage more and more information, right? The management of information has become more and more complex because as computers and a lot of software programs have sped up our ability to put information in front of us. What hasn't necessarily sped up is our ability to manage that information and for us to come to conclusions via that information. And so I feel like a lot of the work that you're doing is helping to manage not just the front end of how do we get the information in front of us, but how do we manage that information, which is the hard part.
Yep.
So I'm curious, you brought up that term digital empathy. And Kevin and I actually talk a lot about the concept of empathy. It's something we deeply treasure in people. Go a little deeper on that concept and how, because just the connotation to me means that you want to do business the right way digitally. So how are the best in class companies across different industries achieving that at a high level?
Yeah. So this is the cheat codes, and I wasn't gonna give this. No, I had to come here with the goods. So Kevin, I won't bring nothing better. So get out your pen and paper, people. There is something I've been able to discover, and that is a scientific formula for something that is traditionally considered art. Empathy is a very human thing. When we think of empathy, we think of something that we do personally between people. We don't think of an AI being able to empathize. That's just not something we present today. Maybe in the Jetsons or something in the future, but today we don't think of empathy as something that AI is capable of. But I'm here to change that. What I found is that there's an actual formula. There's a scientific, repeatable formula for empathy. And that formula I'm gonna give it to you right now. It's context times value times speed. And if you take that just as a simple concept, context is what we all experience. You ever called in for to get support and someone says, hold on, let me review your account? That's getting context. The other one is value. It's limited, it's fixed. I can't give everyone a free giveaway or a rebate or a discount. So in any interaction with companies dealing with customers, they're constantly balancing that value, the context, and how fast they deliver it. And companies that do that well have a well-balanced relationship. Great companies, they have found that sweet spot. They know it takes this many days to go live for their platform, let's just say to go live with their software, because they know when they do that, that brings the value to life. And if they don't achieve within that time frame, they're not going to be able to bring the right value. And so the question companies always deal with is what right balance of context, value, and speed is sustainable. And that's what I help companies really find using their data.
And how do you go about, because I think that's really interesting, and it immediately resonates with me, right? Because one of the things I think all companies have a hard time with today is the difference between a check mark and a prioritized check mark, which I'll give you a little example, which would be if we receive 100 calls in a day from customers and they all need a solution to some issue, right? Some could be as simple as resetting a password, which of course AI should be able to do that. But some could be as complex as like a contractual issue that's coming forth in 60 days. We can feel really busy because we have a to-do list and we may check off 10 things that day. And we may feel like we worked really hard. We worked a lot of hours, we grinded, but did we really efficiently run the business? Because maybe we should have done a different 10 things that day and prioritized those things out appropriately. So I know with obviously machine learning and specifically generative AI, there's a lot of opportunity there to weed through a lot of that and take care of some of the more mundane tasks immediately. But how do you approach something like that from your company's standpoint?
Yeah, this is a great part of it. When it comes down to timing, you got to be at the right place at the right time. And how you do that with data done well is exactly what you're talking about. You're prioritizing people that has the best optimal output. And I'm going to use an old term that we all remember back in the day, opportunity cost. We don't talk about that term enough. But what is the right set that gives you the best outcome every day? And it's that being at the right place at the right time every time is the mantra of what we're building with DataPlant. And that's providing the right insights. And one of the biggest tackling elements of that is having the right formulas. When we think about all SaaS software, even though the technology has gotten better, the visuals have gotten better, for the most part, the underlying algorithms have remained for the most part the same. We are using, no matter what industry you're in, when it comes to something like health scoring, we are all using one of three common frameworks. Either we're doing LIFO, which is last in, first out. And then on the other side, if you have other people that do things like cumulative scoring, if they have, poor logins, -4, the champion missed a meeting, -20. So you're doing these scorings based on some cumulative roll up of actions and outcomes. What that leads to is most people are in the yellow. And so what I did, I think everyone, if I recommend on this call, in your industry, go to the fundamentals. Look at those underlying concepts and principles that underpin the industry and look for gains there. Because that's what I did with DataPlant. I looked at that formula and went to the core, which was how we identify risk.
It's interesting you bring that up. Last week I was lucky enough to be in Washington, D.C. and have the chance to talk to a few U.S. senators and their staffs about AI, data. One of the questions that kept popping up, and I was interested in your take on it, was, obviously in our industry, we've used traditional AI for years, right? And it's all around fraud monitoring, finding red flags, utilizing machine learning to raise those flags more quickly and help reduce fraud, therefore protecting our consumers and our customers. We all know that the bad actors, are definitely using AI to be able to plow through passwords and do more harm, using AI. So we've got to certainly be able to use it. But, when it comes to generative AI, that's where obviously there's more nervousness in that generative AI. That's where all the Simpsons, future negatives come out, right?
Yep.
But, obviously we're using generative AI in a really healthy way, which is to aid humans in making decisions, not make it in place of humans. But I was curious for your thoughts around, the variance in use cases for traditional AI versus generative AI and how you see that impacting, say the next 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, there's a fun formula here that I think is emerging. And we are in a time where there's no answers. I will tell you that. The innovations that we're going to see today are going to look like Etch-a-Sketch. Like we're going to think ChatGPT was outdated 10 years from now. And that's real. And so part of that is when we look at how we handle data and how we approach problems, the approach of how we go after that is so much different now. In the past, you might have had 4 or 5 different toolkits. And then essentially what's happened is 1 or 2 of those toolkits won the war. Over time, the one that kind of dominated was this framework or this approach of looking at data over time in the past to predict the future. This one was very big for things like spam email and then also identifying fraud. Those are 2 big industries that led the charge here. And the underlying concept is I'm going to look at the data set, look at people that were traditionally labeled before. So I pre-label. This is called supervised learning. I pre-labeled the data to tell me these are examples of people that were spam or were fraud in the past. Here are 32 new clients based on what's happened in their past. How close do they look to one of those examples? That basic supervised learning use case of looking at data over time has dominated the industry. What generative AI has opened up, and what's generally opening up with this, is this idea of more unsupervised learning techniques. What I mean by it is I'm not giving it the answers up front. Scientists all over the world are deploying a wealth of different techniques. And what's winning right now is what's called an ensemble method. And the core idea is like I might take a time series model at my core, but then augment it with other different modeling techniques so I get a better outcome. That is what you're seeing here that's emerging. And really where I think the opportunity at hand is to translate the outcome of, hey, this person is at risk into what we call the last mile problem, which is how do you take any insight and turn it into an action that's going to move the needle? And that last mile is where generative AI has been really closing the gap. We've all written an email with ChatGPT. We've all had it break down a passage of text. That issue, that problem is where we're going to see a lot more innovation over the next 10 years.
So that's an interesting, what I find is like, I think ChatGPT will probably be out. It'll look like a Etch-a-Sketch in 2 years, probably, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even the 6.0 will make the 4.0 look weak.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing like pretty big progress with every turn. So I think people underestimate the impact that this will have on all industries over the next 5 to 7 years. Brian, what are you seeing from your world?
Well, I'm curious. There's a concept that marketers do where they want to create customer personas to influence everything from messaging to visuals, certainly advertising. Is what you're talking about, is this going to blow that up? Because I was seeing these, you're not even having to really tell the technology to sort into personas. It's less about compilations of data and more about generating solutions. Am I even saying that right? I feel like I'm in new territory.
I'll put a little extra on there. So I think you're right. You're in the right ballpark for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
That's how we shape the relationship is changing. And before, when I shaped the relationship, I would put a lot of manual work into defining what made you unique. The difference is we're passively doing that. So we've all done this, right? You ever used a tool and you first log in for the first time? It says, who are you? Are you a marketer? Are you a salesperson? What are you planning to use? What? They're trying to gather your intent. Intent is the new special sauce that's going to make all these products taste better. The better I can capture your intent, the better I can serve you. And so what we've seen across the industry in the past with that whole time series modeling is there was no intent baked into it. I would just generally treat everyone the same. If you got -4 logins, I mean, that's bad regardless of what's going on. But what we found out over the last 10 years, some people might want to log in only once a year because they're using you for tax filings. That's it. That's a healthy account. So if you prioritize them as risk the rest of the year and you put time into that, you're wasting your time. So when we go back to that optimizing time and being in the right place at the right time every time, comes back exactly what you're talking about, Brian. And marketing is exactly in that challenge today. We are going to see a total shift for a lot of pressures. You're getting rid of third-party cookies. There's other pressures where we've all developed an immune system to spam emails, right? We get an email that's cold, we get that out of there quickly. So all these factors have put evolutional pressure to have to solve that problem you're describing, Brian. And that's going to lead to less manual defining of categories of someone or personas and more passive.
Because right now, creating those personas takes quite a bit of time and effort, research and discussion and kind of getting it dialed in when we get to do that work with clients. I don't know if AI anytime soon is going to replace the human strategic element. You might tell me, oh, that's next week.
Oh, it's already here. So I'll give you just a really example. We're dancing. This is back and forth. You give me a text box. You've been having a meeting. Let's just say KJ is your customer. You and KJ have a really good conversation. You know, okay, he has these goals for the year. Here's where his issues, here's where some of his dreams are. Here's what we're going to achieve. You put that in one text box. In the past, that's what we called unstructured data, meaning all the information was locked in that one text box. If you wanted to know anything, someone had to go read line to line to get the information and turn it into insight. Well, now what I could do is take that one text box and apply these and this is what we do in Data Plant and our ability to model. We apply large language calculated fields. And what that means is when I mark or go to like label, that opportunity to like label something is done a little bit differently. So as we structure our data and as we go about this, I think there's an opportunity for us all to, as we experience this, to really innovate and change how we do business. And it comes from this same problem. So let's say we got KJ, he's a customer. We have this little, we understand his intent. We know kind of relationship. What do we do with that? How do we take action on that? And this is where, again, as I shared, maybe closing out here, some of the tactics of large language models is making that effort to convert that raw text into actual knowledge easier, because each large language calculated field can look at that large raw text and say, you know what are his interests? And based on reading raw text, turn it into a pick list of 5 to 6 interest options. So just imagine what took you, some human had to enter it into the box, had to interpret it, go label the fields, and had the processes. Now you just put the text in, boom, it's instantly labeled with every possible label, with each field extracting what category it knows out of it.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's here. The question would be, Castle, you could ask yourself is this, like, your intuition is probably going to say one answer and I'm probably going to disagree. If you had a medical condition and you went to the doctor and someone said, it's either this or this, I'm just not sure, let's monitor it. Would you rather see have a doctor look at that next or AI? So my answer is AI, because it removes like emotions that may prevent people from looking outside of the box and looks at data. And it looks at a broader category of potential outcomes, and it can weed through them in the speed of light. So Sam, I'm curious how you'd answer that question.
Yeah, it's a weird one. So maybe not today. I like the human. Now, it depends on what thing. Now, if I'm getting my lungs checked for cancer or something like that, where they're looking at the X-ray, definitely an AI. The way that AI has evolved in that space, visually being able to detect things like tumors or abscess or anything like that, is just outstrapped anything a human could do. So there are spaces like that. The harder ones, and this is where we try to lean in with our company Data Plant, is the problems that aren't as straightforward, where you have to take in factors from multiple data sources. That's where AI is generally struggling today, and where humans, I think, will continue to prevail. Think about it the same way as business. When I have an issue with support, and it's just support only, I can deal with that. But if it's support impacting product, which is impacting the contract, which is impacting the relationship in meetings, all these complexities are so related. Those problems are complex because they're changing all the time. And it's that kind of relationship problem that, again, when it comes to AI in health or in business, we're seeing that problem being solved. And I see us as a leader in business doing that with dealing with what they call multivariate modeling, when I have different data points from all different types of sources telling me a story.
So I've done a little work in the healthcare space, and I've now lived 28 years with a rare illness. So when you were asking me what I want the doctor versus the AI, there's a lot of, there's a dichotomy in healthcare between opinion-based medicine and evidence-based, at least in rare illness, like what you see rheumatologists for. A torn ligament's a torn ligament. You can trust that doctor's opinion based on the evidence of the scan, right? But with something like what I had, with all these mysterious symptoms and what ultimately became an autoimmune diagnosis, that doctor could have solved my diagnosis, could have been solved in probably 3 minutes instead of 3 months. And when I was diagnosed, 60% of people, this was in the 90s, 60% of people were dying because of how long it took. I got lucky that my doctors grabbed the right piece of data at the right time. But you fast forward to now, very few people are dying from what I have because of that information that's already available. And so with AI processing all of that real world evidence and having it at people's fingertips, I would imagine it's going to solve a lot of things that used to be mysteries.
I think a lot of the rare stuff will be caught a lot more quickly. And all the gray areas, like, hey, as a soccer dad, I don't know how many times I've been to the doctor and they've said, yeah, there's like a white spot on the bone. I don't think it's broken, but maybe it's a fracture. I can't quite tell. And AI can answer that extremely quickly.
Is what we have to get comfortable with especially in our professional lives, and trying to compete, that division of labor and being content with I for one, I know you agree, Kevin, you've often measured your value in the workforce by how much work you put in. And are we going to have to totally reshape how we think about our value in terms of the lift?
Yeah, I'll let Sam answer too. But one of the nice things about AI too, though, is presently like generative AI is very effective with like really mundane tasks, right? So as an example, if we have 30,000 calls a month that come into Solera Commerce for various reasons, right? There's about 70% of those that are as simple as, can you reset my password or change our address or something really simple? And then a lot of them are more complex, like, hey, we're also taking our storefront to a fair and we'd like to have set up a food truck, and we need a different types of payment solution, and we'd like the reporting to be aggregated. So one of the cool things about generative AI is like you can take care of a lot of those mundane tasks that use humans that actually the humans don't want to do. It is an opportunity cost for that human because they're doing mundane tasks when they could be spending more time with a customer on a more complex issue, which both helps the human develop and evolve in their careers and also helps us to take 60 to 70% of that work off the plate more quickly for the customer instead of having to wait maybe 48 hours to get something taken care of. It's taken care of in seconds. And then the more complex issues are also solved more quickly. So it can aid humans. And then secondarily, even for our analysts and our developers, they can QA code, they can aggregate large sums of data and get to like outcomes that they can review more quickly. So I think in many cases also, it can do the mundane task instead of humans, but in other cases, it can help humans be more effective and have better data to make decisions more quickly.
Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to change much when it comes to how much we put work in. For example, we were all supposed to be hanging out on the beach right now, right? I think we were told the factories are going to take over all the work. We'll all have more leisure. Don't worry about your 9 to 5. Once the computer's invented, you only have to work 2 hours a day. We were already promised to be hanging out. And what has happened? And so I see as humans, we all have a drive to do, and for the most part, to want to make an impact in this world. So I see as we get more innovations, even doubling down on what we have today, I don't see people pulling back their work effort. We're just going to do more. So these force multipliers are going to allow for us to do more than we saw possible. I doubt people are just going to put their feet up and hang out. But with that in mind, I do there's some elements of that are so much different that is important to talk about.
Won't there be some displacement though?
Yes. So how we value work and how we value people.
Well, but if Kevin's got 70% of his calls can be done by a machine, is there going to be a mass migration to different kinds of work? If machines take, in that one example, I can give you one, we don't need as many copywriters at agencies now because we're using generative AI to remove a lot of the mundane part of being a writer so that the writer can focus on being a writer, instead of gathering source material for 45 minutes to an hour and a half. Source material is within seconds or a minute or two, and you spend the rest of the time being a writer. So you don't need as many writers for that.
You remember that old quadrant, though, that has like urgent and not important at the top, and then the one across is like not urgent, very important.
Absolutely.
So the way I've like thought about this and seen real examples of this occurring is what we spend so much of our time on with our team members is that urgent, not important stuff. And so what I see with like going back to Sam's discussion about opportunity cost, that's why I use the example of like helping a customer with something complex instead of resetting the password. Like I genuinely don't see it as like a reduction in force, but I think of it as an increase in companies' ability to actually solve problems. What you don't spend enough time on is like how do we actually create solutions for our customers that differentiate us amongst those things and help our customers, right? So when you're not having to reset passwords, you just take those calories and burn them on things that are more positive for the customer. So I don't see it as like a reduction. I see it as like maybe it enables companies to do what their actual mission was to do, which is focus more on the customer and solutions.
Spend more time serving, spend more time innovating.
Yeah. What do you think, Sam?
Provide actual value. And you took the words right out of my mouth. Again, I was kind of leading that way, which is we're not going to see a reduction of force in the way that we think of it. We are, to your point, though, Brian, we're going to see a shift of duties. So within my role, I might not have done the same thing. I'll just give you a very quick, short example. The big differentiator in customer management in the past was soft skills. Your ability to take notes, your ability to send thorough follow-ups, and to have consistent, timely engagement. Those three things what made you great. So if I had 10 CSMs, the ones that were really good at that, or customer success managers, those are the greats. With that now becoming ubiquitous, I mean, even things like spell check. We all got Grammarly. We all got something that's helping us spell better. So the value of somebody who's a really good speller has become less important. And so that's what I think is going to shift here is what we value in our roles, the type of skill sets it takes to be successful. That's going to shift. But the art of putting together successful businesses is not changed fundamentally.
So Jess, our today's producer, she's a very talented designer. And I'm very heartened by the fact that generative AI seems to think we all have 6 or 8 fingers on each hand. I'm not seeing what she does as much under threat as the copywriting stuff. I did want to ask you before we wrap up, and thank you so much. My mind is in pieces behind me on the floor, all over my office here. I saw you did a post on LinkedIn. You're a co-founder in a startup, Data Plant, which we've mentioned a few times, and you're also a working dad. Kevin and I are working dads too, and I just wanted to hear about the challenges. You've got a little boy, is that right?
Boy, yep.
And how old is your little boy?
22 months, about to be.
How are those challenges mounting for you right now at 22 months? Is this dual challenge of scaling a human and scaling a business? How are you handling that, man?
Whew. I wonder, like, how do we get here? What do we do with people? I feel like the new guy just showed up at the parent party, and I'm like, why are we in this situation? As a society and as a culture, how we prioritize family might need some revision, especially with the innovations with AI. Because personally, I find that my cup runneth over every day, as it should, as a person trying to be great. But the society that we live in, does it have to be this way? So, for example, I'm in California. For anybody that knows Cali, shout out. Finding childcare in California, we need AI for that alone. just alone in submission. So imagine the challenges of life that would be different if we all had more time to spend raising our children. And I think that's something where, as a society, we face this in the form of our birth rates. We've all heard this, the more societies become sophisticated, birth rates go down. It's a big problem. How do we solve it? I think it's really this problem here, our relationship with work. I love to be productive. I love putting in work. I'm a Jesuit by heart. Shout out to my St. Louis University people that go back in the day. You know how it is. We care about being men for others. But the other part of this equation is, how do we really facilitate a society that doesn't make people have to work 2 jobs full time and leave the essentially the streets to raise their kids? And so that's what I'm going through. It's some of the best moments of my life. I stay up to about 2 a.m. every night, but I get to read my son to sleep. I get to do these things, these moments. And I shout out to, again, my wife. She's phenomenal. She was the one that was dead set on us getting 1,000 books read before kindergarten. So we did that. And I wasn't able to, if I was just by myself, I wouldn't have been able to do that. But for most people who don't have the privilege, whether the luxury, whether it's time, the type of career, to have opportunities, we are disenfranchising so many of our families by not creating a society where that's sustainable. So it's the hardest, most rewarding thing I've ever done. And I just wish as a society, we would unlock that ability for our young people to not only be innovators, but to be true creators of life.
Samuel, thank you so much.
Honor. Honor. Gentlemen, what a pleasure. I know we're going to be doing some great things. Ski Tech 2025 is around the corner.
Yeah,
There's going to
baby.
be some deep fakes. There's going to be some special appearances. Who knows might show up.
Who knows, man? You got a guy from Nashville as the chairman. You just never know what's going to happen.